Welcome everyone to the Hacking with watchOS course. My name is Steve DiStefano, longtime Apple developer, and together with one of the top Swift programmers in the field, my good friend Paul Hudson, we put this course together. Paul has written many best-selling books on teaching the Swift language and how to build apps in iOS, macOS, server-side Swift, and several others. And now his latest book, Hacking with watchOS, has been translated into this lecture-style course, packed with step-by-step information on how to build amazing watchOS apps. And we call it Hacking with watchOS because we're hacking or playing around with the language, using it in unique and interesting ways. And if you're completely new to the Swift language, that's okay. We start at the very beginning, in the language section. So what's it like to build apps for watchOS? Well, if you've ever written a haiku, you'll know it's not easy. At the very least, we can all agree that in English, a haiku should have 3 lines comprising 5 syllables, 7 syllables, then 5 more syllables. If you're steering closer to the Japanese originals, your haiku would usually be about the natural world or the seasons, and it would probably have a fairly reflective tone. The haiku form is an example of what's called constrained writing, creating written art that observes very strict rules. It's easy to look at this and think, why would someone enjoy writing a haiku? After all, surely it would be better to have as many syllables as you want, to rhyme as you please, and use any topic that springs to mind. The truth is that forcing your brain to think inside constraints helps guide your thinking, and it simplifies your architecture and ultimately hones your skills. Making apps for watchOS is, I think, the ultimate example of constrained programming. Sure, there are competitions that ask you to write games in under 1K of code, but that's only constrained in one dimension. watchOS is constrained on 3 levels. You have limited resources. Any iPhone, iPad, or Mac has 10 times more computing power than the Apple Watch, so there's no scope to waste system resources. You have limited screen space. Even the larger Apple Watch has only a resolution of 312 by 390, which is small even when compared to an old iPhone such as the iPhone 4. And you have limited user attention. Apple recommends your apps complete their task in under 2 seconds, which is incredibly hard. So like I said, making apps for watchOS is the ultimate example of constrained programming. You're constrained in 3 dimensions at the same time, and it can take some real work to make great apps. Of course, that's where Paul Hudson's book comes in, and thus this course. He's done a lot of the hard work for you by creating projects that teach watchOS coding while taking into account the above constraints. And something to note, of all the projects in this course, only the first one requires you to have a physical Apple Watch to work. That being said, it's still much easier if you have one around because apps are easier to test if you can tap on them directly. And an interesting quirk of Apple Watch is that it relies on a phone to be fully functional. Sure, the watches are designed to work alone, and many watchOS apps are fully functional as independent apps. But ultimately, all watchOS apps are shipped alongside an iOS counterpart. It's not possible to ship watchOS apps directly through a watch app store. Being able to work alongside a paired iPhone is important, and towards the end of this course, I'll be showing you how to transfer data between watch and phone to keep your 2 apps in sync. However, this is not a course about iOS, so for the most part, we'll be ignoring the iPhone app components of our projects. And a note for iOS and macOS developers, watchOS uses many technologies that you're already familiar with: Xcode, Swift, storyboards, provisioning profiles, and more. So in some respects, you can make headway fairly quickly. However, there are a few significant differences that you should be aware of. And here they are. You have no choice but to design your interface using storyboards. You cannot create interfaces using code. Although watchOS has controls such as buttons and sliders, there is no concept of views or layers like you would have with a UI view or CA layer. And you can't read values from your controls. That means you can't ask questions like, what's selected in the picker, or what's the value of the slider? Instead, you'll get told when a value changes and then you need to store it. And auto layout doesn't exist, and neither does auto resizing masks. Instead, watchOS has its own interface layout system that's much easier to learn and use. And you should design your interfaces to go edge to edge with little or no margins. The Apple Watch screen has a natural margin on the hardware, so you should use the full available screen space. Okay, with that being said, if you're completely new to the Swift programming language, go through the language section and start there. Or if you're ready to get started with the projects, I'll see you in the project section.